Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. My name's Nick, and today, well, what are we going to be doing? That's right, we're going to be refreshing beds. How refreshing! So, this is on the other side of my allotment. This is the first bed that I'm going to be doing. It is exhausting work. I think this side of the allotment needs a lot more work on the basis that basically I've had it for less time, and I find the longer that you have an allotment, the easier it is to tackle the weeds because you kind of eke away at them. This particular side of the allotment has issues with stinger nettles. My goodness. If there's one thing that I can grow on this side of the allotment, it's a stinger nettle. They are rife here. Okay, this section here, I actually had a massive compost heap where this was. So all I did was go ahead and spread out that compost heap. And I think that the person that had this allotment before me had an absolute ton of stinging nettles. I do know that this person who had it before me had a big issue with stinging nettles being like one of the reasons why they gave up the allotment. They actually had overwhelming amount of weeds and they just couldn't tackle it. That was the official reason they gave up. So yeah, that's that. I do understand what they're talking about because oh my goodness, it's a lot of weeds, and it's more perennial weeds than annual weeds. So for example, grasses and the stinger nettles. Now the stinger nettles, they're like the gift that keeps on giving because like not only do you have loads of weeds you have to remove, which is annoying, but they sting and they are the worst in the summer. So like going through short sleeves and pulling them out and getting stung, it's just like it feels that the minute you pull them up they just absolutely spread everywhere. I know it's not actually the reality of them, but it is quite frustrating the way that they are, you know what I mean? So what I'm going to go through is I'm going to go through here and basically I've like picked up some of the nettles. I'm removing the bricks. I use the bricks because here in the UK, I always say we got really strong winds, but I know around the world like strong winds are completely different to what I'm experiencing. We have what I consider in my very limited knowledge, strong winds. So I weigh everything down with bricks because the first year I was here, you probably don't remember, but I'll tell you anyway. All of the black plastic on this side of the allotment flew off and landed all over the fences and was really annoying. So I'll go ahead and weight it down as much as possible, just so that I don't have that issue again. I mean, I have a problem, I solve the problem, hopefully won't have the problem again, right? Now this is a massive stinging nettle, and stinging nettles kind of grow along the floor under the black plastic. They can't come up through the black plastic because the black plastic stops the light, but they do kind of spread looking for light. And as you can see here, this plant is massive. So what I'm doing here is just pulling it up and hoping that over a long period of time, I'm basically going to weaken it. That is the hope anyway. Now I did think to myself, because you know I am no dig, okay, but I am easing this thing in nettle out because these gloves, I love these gloves. They're a fiver from Asda, bargain. But because they are very large and my hands aren't as large as the gloves, it's really hard to do like fine motor skills in them. I really struggle. As you see, I'm trying to get my fingers all the way down to the edge of the glove. I also, incredibly helpfully, decided to leave these out in the rain overnight so they are moist. But I really struggle to pick them up. I actually hate wearing gardening gloves. That's why you always see me putting them on and putting them off and putting them on and then stinging myself and putting them back on because I only wear them for stinging nettles. Everything else I use my own like little delicate handies because I like being able to feel what I'm doing. But the stinger nettles here, well, if I pulled them up by my own little fingers, I would be stung red or raw. So I am actually using these lovely gloves. I'm not going to complain about the gloves because the gloves absolute bargain, and I am very well known in real life for being so stingy. But I have to say that a fiver for these gloves worth every penny, and I was proper resenting buying them for a fiver. But honestly, you can't get stung through them. They're like a suede sort of material. Don't know if they're real suede, but they are absolutely like you cannot feel anything through them. I really appreciate that. and you have like a whole outfit made out of the same material. Now, as you can see, stinging nettles are the gift that keeps on giving. And someone told me a little while ago, why don't you go ahead and drown any perennial weeds you get and make a tea for your garden? And I've actually done this. I've gone ahead and put these all in a bucket of water, and hopefully I'll drown them and make tea. So we'll see how well that works out. I'm quite excited about it. I did buy some borage this year so that I could make borage tea. Not for me, but for the plants. I'm quite excited about that. I've got one of those calendars this year, you know, the ones that you open up, obviously, every day. That was the silliest thing I've ever said. And their seeds, and I'm getting some absolutely corking seeds. So I'd tell you that. I'm really excited about it. I had strawberries and I had Chinese lanterns so far. Apparently, Chinese lanterns berries are edible. I didn't know that. I'm very excited to grow them in the new year. Apparently, they can be grown in February. I don't know if I'll be doing them February or March because it's heat in the greenhouse, isn't it? So I'm excited about this being up. I feel like at the time it was so frustrating because it looks like they're coming up really easily, but at the time, like, oh my god, look at my face. So at the time I was like really stressing about them because they kind of like have roots on every tiny little bit of them, and it's actually quite difficult to pull up. Unlike the bindweed, the whole time I was doing this, I was actually thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I way prefer bindweed. I way prefer bindweed. Bindweed is so much easier to pull up than this. But the whole time, who's ever thought to themselves that they prefer bindweed? You know what I mean? It's like, who likes bindweed? Definitely not me. But it's so funny because I'm sitting there going, oh, I hate this. I wish it was bindweed because bindweed's so much easier to pull up. I actually don't mind pulling up bindweed underneath the black plastic, but this, as you can see, it's just long and tedious. I think it's because this is so close to the surface. I feel like I have to get it all up. As you can see, look how much there is. And once again, every little bit is like absolutely attached to the ground. So I'm having to pull it up. There was so many. Like, this is what this side of the allotment is like. It's just absolutely covered in stinging nettles. Which means, right, because there's always a bright side, it means that this allotment has really good soil. So that is a very good thing to think about, isn't it? So if you ever see, or if you've got tons and tons and tons of stinging nettles, just think, oh, I've got very good soil. That's good. Because that's what I say. I've got tons of stinging nettles in the far side as well. This place is just full of stinging nettles. But once I've kind of weakened them, pulled them up and pulled them up and pulled them up, they will eventually die. I mean, you can't grow without roots and you can't grow without leaves. So it's one of those things. They're going to be under plastic, so good luck coming up. And that's why I'm a little bit nervous about the no dig, especially on this side of the allotment, because I know that with no dig, it's awesome. Annual weeds, you don't have a chance with annual weeds. Annual winds lose the battle. But these are well established perennial weeds, and this hasn't been cultivated. This side of the allotment hasn't been worked or cultivated for 4 years. I'm the first person in 4 years to grow on this allotment. That is a long time because nobody wanted it on the basis that it was so riddled with really, really well established perennial weeds. It has brambles as well, but to be honest, I've like already got rid of the brambles. They weren't that bad, you know what I mean? Like the other side, I've got a couple of brambles that come over and you just chop them down and that's pretty much done. But these ones are well established stingers, so that is something to think about. I've also got behind me quite a few brambles that I'm not too sure if they're brambles, or if they're raspberries, but wild raspberries. But anyway, they're very well established and very spiky. So I have my bonfire on top of them and I will be lighting that. It's just been so wet recently. It's been very difficult to light things like bonfires without, well, it going out really. You saw my really pathetic last bonfire, guys, yeah. Obviously roaring fire if you zoom in, but it was not very effective at all. So I'm going to try to light it up probably this weekend. It hasn't been that wet this week. It's been like sparsely raining, but it hasn't been torrential. So I'm going to try. I do try to have a big burn up, you know, in a little while when I cut down my buddleia. I'm probably going to keep the buddleia branches for my peas as some sort of support. They don't grow very large, only about 18 inches, but I thought that would be like a really nice way of doing it without snapping all of my canes that I have. I thought that would be quite nice. As you can see here, still digging. Oh, well, I don't say digging, I'm more easing up the roots because they're deep under. I'm trying to get as much as out as possible. Tell me if I'm doing this wrong. I'm not really a diggy person. Like I said, I've just laid up so much wood chip at home that nothing can get through. I'm getting a few stinging nettles now, but they're just more moving into my plot because I'm got loads of strawberries. I can't actually cover it with anything at the moment. So we will see how that works out. And this, I'm just working away at it. I was getting a little bit frustrated, truth be told. But it is one of those things that at that moment in time, you don't really feel like you're making progress. And I think this is where YouTube and like taking photos and stuff is so important. Anytime I talk to someone about gardening, I'm like, guys, make sure you're taking photos of your gardening, because at the time you're like super frustrated and like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I've been doing this for an hour and I've got absolutely no progress. But if you look back at what I've done, I've made tons of progress. And I think that's easy when you're looking at it all close up. It's so easy to think, I'm not actually doing anything, I'm not making an impact, this is rubbish, it's very stressful. But at the end of the day, even if I'm like, I'm not even stressed, I'm just a little bit miserable doing this, I'm the happiest. I could be at home, I could be doing nothing, I could be watching TV. I'd rather be digging out a stinging nettle than having any of them other options. So even though you hear me moaning, I'm not moaning, I'm just saying. I think it's important to know that sometimes people cannot enjoy things, because when you're down the allotment and it is like the hottest day of the year and you feel sick because you feel like you haven't drank in ages and you're harvesting, or it's the really cold and wet and windy and you're digging up a stinging nettle, it's okay to think this is a little bit rubbish. It's okay. It doesn't mean you hate it. It just means that right now, in that moment, you want to have a sulk. Have at it. I'm all for wallowing in the moment, but then looking at behind and thinking, yeah, I didn't do too badly. And I think that's what allotment gardening is, really, in a nutshell, because lots of people give up this time of year and stop coming round. You notice that the people that come down the allotment, the really passionate newbies, they come down the allotment and they have their little carrots, they plant them, and then this time of year no one's down the allotment, and it's a little bit sad because all the weeds are growing, and the longer you leave it, the more issues that you have at the allotment, if you get what I mean. So it is one of those things that is so fundamental, because it really is fundamental, that people come down and learn and work all year round. I know that some people it's absolutely like there's an issue with it, and I know that some people they're just absolutely impossible for them to do it, and that's absolutely fine. Some people have snow this time of year. I mean, it's December now and it's still quite warm. I mean, I haven't even broken out the old winter jacket yet because it's been so warm this year. It's been absolutely delightful going down the allotment, which is nice. I know that looking into the future, in January and February, it's not going to be this nice. January and February really separates the full-time gardeners for the summer-time gardeners, because it's difficult, it's cold, it's miserable, and the days are so short. I think that's the thing that I really notice this time of year, because normally I could come down to the allotment after work, and that's where I kind of film my sort of like tours of the allotment or quick chats with you guys, and I can't do it because I can't see. Like literally, if I put my hand in front of my face, you wouldn't be able to see it. It's that dark because there's no artificial lights there, is it? It's beautiful and wonderful for that. We're surrounded by farmers' fields. We're literally in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing for ages around us. I mean, the nearest thing is like a drive and there's cows. Sorry, horses. But nothing around us, and I love that. But it does mean that it's incredibly dark, and there's nothing I can do about that. I mean, I could take some artificial lights down, but then it kind of ruins the ambience of the place, doesn't it? So when I go down there in the afternoon, check on the chickens and stuff like that, then I can't really take you guys and film it and say like, oh, look what I'm doing now, because it's pitch black. By the time I get out of work, it's normally sunset. It's one of those things that you go to work in the dark, you come home in the dark, don't you, this time of year. But this year, this does make us, it forces us to rest, which is so important. It's so important to rest and like have a moment to think about next year and think and rest and restore everything. Restore the garden beds. If they were growing, I wouldn't be restoring the garden beds. You know that? Because I'd be growing in them and I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to dig all up these stinging nettles and work away at them. And then they would take over the garden. And this is the fundamental part, really, for this entire project, is that you need to take those moments and rest and restore. Because if not, next year I won't be able to grow in the allotment. It'd just be impossible. You can't take and take and take without restoring. And that goes for the allotment and yourself. Because if you take and take and take from yourself and you don't restore, if you worked like it was harvest all year round, my goodness, I don't think I could do it, guys. I really don't. It is so exhausting. Remember, in the height of the allotment, I was taking how much? Buckets and buckets and buckets of produce home and having to store them. Now, potatoes aren't that bad. I'm not going to complain about potatoes. Potatoes were fine. I just cured them and stuck them in a bag. But the tomatoes and the peppers all had to be processed, didn't they? Into lots of different things like tomato sauces, chilies, etc. If you don't put this horse manure on the allotment, you're not going to get the same sort of harvest as next year. And remember how much this patch gave us last year. The blessing, the absolute blessing that we got of cucumbers. Do you remember? Oh my days, it was amazing. It was the gift that kept on giving. I was so impressed with my cucumbers this year. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, next year, this plot is going to give me tenfold. Because what you put in is what you get out. What you sow is what you reap. And that is the great thing about gardening. If you put the effort in, if you put the time in, then it will give you a harvest. But you've also got to have that mindset of continuously evaluating what you're doing. So, for example, you plant something that was bad. Why was it bad? Did you plant it too close together? Did you plant it too far apart? Did you put it under a tarp because you thought it would help it germinate and now it's all yellow? Did you give it too much fertiliser and now it's burnt? Did you not give it enough fertiliser? This is what I really love about gardening, because it is literally a science experiment waiting for you to do it. And I think that's super cool and super challenging. And I don't know if what I'm doing is correct. I don't know, but I think it's going to work for me. And I think that every year I'll get a little bit better. And every year I'll get a bit more understanding of how the world works and how the gardening works. And I'm enthusiastic to do that. And I'm never going to stop trying things that are new, because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. And that's fine. I've really, really enjoyed having a little bit of a reflection whilst doing this bed, which is lucky because I've got about 15 more to go. Thanks so much for watching. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you're listening now, subscribe. So what I'm doing here basically is I'm just going around and pinning the black plastic. So, as I told you, do have a massive issue with wind, and the winds in the UK will get, well, I want to say really fast, but once again, I'm like, I know that there's places in the world where a house could be swept away, but we did have a greenhouse get lifted and thrown. My one was lifted and thrown. Not very far, it just rolled over sort of thing. Also, we had sheds that were completely, utterly rolled over and smashed into a million pieces. So we do have what I would call quite large winds. And like I was saying before, there's nothing here. This area has no windbreak. It's farmers' fields, then horse stables, then more farmers' fields. So, and a very large park, like a national sort of, you can walk around it park. So as you can imagine, the wind, the only thing that breaks the wind is the allotment. So anything that's not nailed down basically is going to go up and over and out. And this fabric, you see where it's all tattered at the edges? And that's not because I haven't burnt it or anything. That's because it was lifted up and it was flying like a flag on my greenhouse. Lots of them were. And the fact that it wrapped around my greenhouse and the greenhouse is still there, I'm so thankful. I don't know what I would have done if something hit my greenhouse. I'd have been gutted. Thanks for watching, and remember, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.